Hey there, this is the producer of Debi and Sharilyn's podcast. I just wanted to let you know that this is part 2 of a 2-part series. Last week, Dr. Gilmore and Green discussed the personal dimensions of shame and guilt. If you haven't heard that one yet, go give it a listen to help with the context of today's episode. This week, they're diving into the outward dimension, helping us learn how to avoid shaming others and instead invite them to repair and take responsibility. I loved this episode, and I hope you do too.
It's important to point out that reducing our tendency to shame others, though, isn't letting people off the hook. It's about inviting them back into the relationship so that repair and honesty and responsibility can take hold. So in a world that actually often uses humiliation as a shortcut, choosing not to shame is such a powerful act of compassion and courage.
Have you ever longed to be able to talk about values and morals or faith and spirituality without feeling judged? Hi, and welcome to our podcast, Mindful Moments, Insights to Empower the Soul. This podcast will empower you to embrace your true self. What we do see in our work a lot is people that are overcome with a lot of shame numb out. They can't find any emotion. So we're going to shift gears because not only do we experience shame, but do we shame others? I am certain that there are often times when we do and we don't realize it. So we want to talk about first how to recognize it and how to stop. We've spent a lot of time talking about the experience personally of shame. Sometimes we do offer that to others or impose it on others. So when we become irritated, judgmental, overwhelmed, or assume a sense of being superior, and maybe we don't even recognize when we're doing that. I'm in charge. Or sometimes when we feel sadness, fear, or helplessness, and we don't want to appear weak, we might mask it by attacking someone and turning the focus on them. It matters because when we cause shame, we distance ourselves from others. They will pull away because those are feelings that they also can't tolerate.
So as humans, it's really natural for us to make really quick assessments and quick judgments of someone's behaviors, their appearance, and their opinions. That's a natural instinct that we have. But one way that we can really quickly shift away from being judgmental is to recognize those moments when we're tempted to judge someone and move from judgment to curiosity. So you might notice someone saying or doing something that you absolutely disagree with, actually. And that emotion can come up where we want to shame someone. We all know how that happens so quickly, but we could ask ourselves some of these questions, like what might be going on for them? What's happening to you right now? Do this with compassion to consider that. And then explore maybe what pain or fear or unmet need could be underneath their behavior. So this kind of curiosity will interrupt shaming others and instead invites such tender empathy and understanding in beautiful ways. So think about a time when your partner or loved one did something or said something that hurt or struck you as insensitive or disappointing. And maybe you felt that they were even disrespectful. In fact, you might have been stunned by what happened. So use language that describes their behaviors and resulting hurt instead of actually criticizing the person and who they are. That's the difference again between guilt and shame. Like we're talking about behaviors, not fundamental identity. You're bad.
And notice these are exercises that we've already suggested that we do ourselves. Now we're suggesting step on the other side and think about this from a different direction. In the scenario you just suggested, shame would say, you did that, and because of that, you are bad. Guilt would say, what they did really hurt me, and I might say a deal breaker or unacceptable. However, they are good, and they're worthy of my love and any love and acceptance. I will be open and honest about what happened. Clarity, which sets them up to succeed or do better next time. It really brings an awareness to them, ouch, that hurt me, and gives them the opportunity to swiftly repair. So we really want to change it up. Consider swapping shaming phrases for statements that encourage repair instead of what's wrong with you. Let's talk about what happened, and let's talk about how we can repair. Or instead of you always and you never, you can say, this behavior is getting in the way of our connection.
We have to recognize and regulate our own emotions before we respond. That's hard to do. Again, our reactions can be so swift, but it's so much healthier and more productive than reacting irrationally. And so when we react in not healthy ways, it'll actually put fuel on the fire of tension. Whereas responding offers a wake-up call that what is happening or what just happened is not okay. So shame will come out of frustration, or I love this word, emotional flooding. We all know how that feels, right? It's just a flood. And so some helpful ways to reset your emotions before you respond are to pause before speaking. You can even put in like a 5-second rule, when you're in a tense situation, to just slow down and pause before you speak. Take a deep breath. I love this one. Soften your voice, lower your shoulders, and clench your jaw, right? Our jaw has just become so clenched in all this. And so the body can help us stop this shaming impulse if we'll utilize some of these ways to do
Yeah,
it.
what you just pointed out, we don't notice that there's tension in our shoulders or in our face. And it's interesting how much impact that has on the other. Just that stance can be shaming. So, and another thing that we see a lot in our work is that when couples get into tense moments, they speed up. So, you suggested pause, take a deep breath. That will automatically slow your heart rate. Your blood pressure will come down, but recognizing the tension in your body really does help. So, we're talking about the ideal. We always do, Sharilyn. It seems like we're presenting these perfect ways to do relationships, to do our lives, but compassionate accountability is something that I hope we're all working on. What does that mean? Well, it means setting boundaries, personal boundaries in our own world, and addressing harm that hurt you without shaming your friend. So here's some things that take a lot of courage and confidence to do, but these are powerful formulas. First, name the impact of what happened. When a bee stings me, I'm going to say, ouch, right? So you might say something like, when that happened, here's how it hit me. Here's how it affected me. Or a tornado hit. And so my house is kind of in shambles. And then number 2, state your need to offer clarity and to start the process of repair. Do you know what I really need, honestly? And to know, I'd need to know that I can trust you, might be one way to open that conversation. Or I really need you to follow through with your promises. Or I need to feel respected and appreciated by you. And then invite collaboration. So you've outlined the hit, the impact. You've said, this is what I hope for. And then, can we work this out? How can we repair? Is an open door, an invitation to walk into that beautiful repair process. It helps us remain accountable without humiliating others. And when we establish this policy in our most important relationships, it sets everyone up to succeed and to feel more secure.
I love that those words you just remain accountable without humiliating others. Both parts are important, right? Sometimes we do one or the other, but it's so important to be both accountable and do it without creating more shame or humiliation. So one of the things that helps as well is to learn to tolerate imperfection in ourselves and in others, and to just understand we all need wiggle room to be human and imperfect. Shame often comes from too much perfection. We tend to shame others the most when we personally can't tolerate mistakes. Sadly, some of us were raised with perfectionism as the overall expectation. And so when that isn't happening, we start to feel out of control. And so a helpful way to acknowledge that that might be happening inside and to overcome that is to practice telling yourself often, hey, people mess up. This is fixable, and I don't need to be the judge.
So, my favorite thing that you said was people need wiggle room to be human. It goes both ways. In our first section, talking about personal shame, in this section, talking about do we shame others? We all need wiggle room to be human. And wiggle doesn't mean a giant leap into another direction. It means, I need to get back in the groove of doing better. So we need to build shame resilient environments, okay? Set people up to feel safe at home, at work, or in any of our interactions with others. Think about it. This whole life is about building healthy relationships, and it's hard. So celebrate others' efforts, not just outcomes. So, in other words, you didn't get that award, you didn't get the A or the B, whatever, but look how hard you worked. And celebrating that sends such a strong message of value. Normalize repair. We all get it wrong sometimes. Yes, wiggle room. There we are again. Or emphasize belonging even when boundaries are set. Boundaries are not for disconnection, they protect the relationship. When we feel acceptable in our humanness and frailties as imperfect people that you mentioned, Sharilyn, we feel a sense of belonging. Belonging reduces shame behavior dramatically.
I love this term, a shame-resistant environment. It is such a relief, isn't it, to feel safe in an environment where there is wiggle room and this kind of stuff happens. It's actually an emotional experience. You just feel so relieved. So we also are hoping that we all can be more aware of what we would call micro-shaming. This is a therapy term that we use, and it can occur through really small, almost imperceptible body language or things we might say without realizing it. In our work, we would consider these messages of contempt. And contempt is one of the most powerful destroyers of a relationship. And so we just want to mention some of the following, although very subtle ways that we can even shame people without noticing. So we're all going to recognize this, an eye roll. Right? Oh, sarcasm. Any kind of mocking tone, withdrawing suddenly. Oh, this is a hard one. Public corrections. Yeah, that's such a hard thing when that happens. Or saying to someone, you should know better. So basically, these gestures are things that we might say or send a message that people are stupid and shameful.
Oh, that's so painful. When we point this out to couples, they're stunned. They didn't realize that they were sending such a strong message of rejection. So it's really helpful, that self-awareness. So as we become aware of the temptation to react in ways that Sharilyn outlined, invite yourself to notice and replace those behaviors with neutral expressions, a real awareness of your face, your body, a kind tone, a reading voice, even when things get tense, and having private conversations away from anyone else, pulling someone aside, saying, let's talk about this thing that happened so that it feels more neutral and safe. Practice directness. This is something that most people are really uncomfortable with. Eye contact, clarity in the conversation, instead of indirect punishment, which is much of what you were describing earlier, Sharilyn. And so many people shame because they don't know how to name the needs directly, or they haven't thought about it. So it might look like staying physically present, but shutting down completely. That is what stonewalling is. And the person that's stonewalling is not okay. They are intensely flooded at times. So no one's okay. The stonewalling looks like walking out of the room maybe and not saying anything. We might tell ourselves that we're withdrawing to keep peace, but no, for the other person, it's a powerful message of rejection. Or it might look like short, curt responses, void of warmth, certainly, or any sensitivity, and full of disinterest, disdain, or mocking. Instead of punishing through shame, the way that we described, say what you need plainly. Using that formula we outlined earlier, ask for repair explicitly, which sends the message, this relationship matters to me. And I think it matters to you. So can we work on this? Can we work through this? And own your own feelings instead of projecting them.
Yeah, as I'm listening to you, it's so important to always remember that so many people were never taught this as children or in families. And so these are hard things that we're talking about. If you haven't, had modeled or learned how to express your needs, it's difficult. So again, this is the ideal, but such positive, good things to do. And so we want to talk about how to build your own shame awareness. And we know we've said this many times that the first step towards true change is always just awareness. So try to recognize when you're sending the other person a message of rejection, animosity, or that awful word contempt. Ask yourself, am I trying to shame them because I'm upset with them or upset about what they said or did? If you can answer yes, consider some of the things that we've outlined as just other ways to kind of address the discomfort without crushing. That's a really good word, crushing the other person's feeling of value. I think we all know what it feels like to be crushed by someone.
Painful. And, as we become aware of our tendencies to shame others, instead offer clarity, be clear. I like to say be clear, direct, and non threatening. Be clear about disappointment. Disappointment is a normal human experience. We create conditions for real growth and our own accountability and offering the person that we're interacting with a level of accountability and connection. So shame shuts people down, but empathy, compassion, curiosity opens them up. Every time we pause, every time we regulate ourselves and respond with dignity rather than judgment, we strengthen the kind of relationships where people feel safe enough to change themselves.
I had an experience with my husband this week. He felt badly about how disorganized his desk was. And I just said to him, "Oh, hey, it's okay. I know how busy you are." And his little eyes welled up with tears, and you could just see the relief in him when he felt that compassion. And so, yeah, just an awareness of ways that we can shame others and the beautiful bonding experience it can be when we don't. So it's important to point out, though, that reducing our tendency to shame others, though, isn't letting people off the hook. I love this. It's about inviting them back into the relationship so that repair and honesty and responsibility can take hold. So, in a world that actually often uses humiliation as a shortcut, choosing not to shame is such a powerful act of leadership. I love that. We can lead in our relationships. We can be leaders and show people how this can be done. So, it's a powerful act of leadership, compassion, and courage. It's not easy to do. It takes a lot of courage to respond this way to the powerful emotion of shame.
Right. Wow. This has been a powerful conversation. And we're kind of at the point, Sherilyn, where we say, therefore what? And I love asking that because this isn't about us preaching. This is about us actually, when we pull together this information, we are learning, we are growing. And I always find something in there that I'm thinking, I need to do better at that. I need to make sure that I'm looking into the face of the person that I might have been hurt by and see their expression. I often will say to my clients, consider their unfortunate moment, their video. When you see that video, you can say to yourself, there's something else going on, something bigger, and this relationship matters. I'm not going to shame them. I need to seek understanding. That's what I'm going to do more of and try to continue to practice being human and being better tomorrow and today, actually.
I love that. I'm going to go back to the things we've talked about on guilt. I've been thinking about this through the whole time we've been talking about it. There's a term I love called divine discontent. And I love that when I think about guilt because it's that gap, right, between who we maybe were in the moment and who we want to be. But I love the idea of divine discontent because we add God to that. We add our sense of worth when we experience something that didn't go, perfectly. And so to handle guilt in a way with even that concept of divine discontent, that it's a positive way for me to get back to who I'm hoping I'll be and show up as in a different time. So that's my therefore what.
That's beautiful. The motivator to reach up.
Yes, motivator to reach up while we're going through.
For a higher way. Yeah, I love that. Instead of the power of the adversary that gives us messages, you're never going to be enough. Might as well give up. That's so painful. Well, thank you so much for listening today. And we hope you'll continue to listen and reach out, send us ideas of topics that you would like to hear about.
Yes, thanks so much, everyone. We love doing this. We appreciate so much you taking the time to listen to our thoughts. Take care.